for coming back to another episode of Cody Builds. Today, I've already got a little bit ahead of you, as you saw in the intro there. I've been putting in some work. Let me get you caught up. Now, the first thing I did before I even started recording this morning, I went ahead and I stripped the dash out, and it's really not too difficult to do. About the worst piece to get out was this trim piece. Phil actually helped me with that a couple weeks ago. And we really struggled to get the nuts off the back side of that. They're like some little tin captured trim nuts, and they really just wanted to break. They didn't really want to come off in one piece. So that was a little bit annoying, but everything else came out pretty straightforward. The one thing I struggled with, and old guys that work on these old Ford trucks will know this probably, I did not, so I had to look it up. The dimmer switch gave me some problems. The knob on the dimmer switch doesn't just pull off. You have to use a little release button that's on the switch itself that pulls the whole dimmer switch shaft out of the switch. So I show you that here. It's pretty straightforward once you know what the trick is, but I fought with that for a few minutes before I just went ahead and looked it up. So for anybody working on these old Fords, if you're going to switch out the dimmer switch, this is how you do it. Once I got all this wiring stripped out here, I set out to start getting this patch that we put in last week fit up. You can see I fit this in much nicer than what I had it before. It's really fit in nice. It's ready to be welded in. But really the most time consuming thing, these little patches I had to put in on this leg that were rusted out, these little pie-sized pieces, they take forever to cut up, they take forever to fit into place, and then I started grinding them down on this side. So I really burned up a lot of my day just getting these little tiny patches put in. But once I got those patches put in, I went ahead and I punched out our panels for all the spot welds. We're really ready to get this thing tacked in. The first thing I need to do though is I need to prime the back side of this panel, and then I need to prime the inside of this area here. Just to keep it from rusting any further, give it a little protection in there. So we're going to use a weld-through primer on the back side of this and on the inside of this panel. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to blow all the dust and dirt out of this thing. All right, so I'm going to use a weld-through primer on all of the areas that we're actually going to be spot welding, but then probably on the inside here, where I can, I'll use a rust reformer primer in there, just to help slow down, stop any rust that might exist up inside this panel here. I'm not too worried about getting primer on the outside of the panel here. We're going to be sanding all this down and repainting these kick panels anyways. That spot you see in there is where the fender bracket is welded onto the cowl panel. And it looks rusty. It's actually not. That's actually pretty solid there. Nothing that I'm concerned about anyways. So we kind of got this coated as best we could. I'm not worried about, I see some runs up there. I don't really care. This is all just extra protection inside of this panel for now. It'll give us a few extra years of life inside of there if things start to rust out. So now that I've got that all done, I've got my panel, the back side of my panel primed up as well. I'm going to start fitting everything back up and getting it ready to weld in. You can see the back side of this I've got sprayed with my weld-through primer now. Everything primed up. I've been trying to be really good about that throughout this build, making sure we're priming all the back sides of our repairs, getting as much protection as we can to safeguard against future rust repairs. Okay, I'm going to start tacking this in place. I'm going to start up in the top corner up here, and we're going to work our way down the panel and around to the side. Now, this panel's kind of interesting, the way it's contoured. The vent here is partially recessed back in the panel, so this isn't flush, straight flat. So what I tried to do is cut out on this panel where it was flat, but we have this kind of transition of these different textures of the panel here. So we're just going to try and bridge the gap between those, play it somewhere safe in between in the middle, and get it just as close as we can, and then we'll come back in with the grinder and the flap wheel. We'll clean up all these little areas and kind of make it look stock again. that fit up really nice. All right, everything's tacked in now. Panel looks pretty good. I haven't done any fitment up over here yet, but that's okay. The rest of this is all fit, ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and weld in down along this line, probably over to about here, start cleaning this stuff up because I wanna get the firewall fit into place. And I want this all welded and cleaned up before I do that, just because it's gonna be a lot more difficult to sand all that stuff up and make it look nice once the firewall goes back into place. The camera died on me there at some point, but you get the idea here. Everything's not perfect, but much better. I still have to do some like finish sanding in here, but this turned out pretty good. I ended up using a die grinder in the back here to kind of clean up that back channel. Yeah, it is what it is. It looks pretty good. We're gonna have another piece of the firewall over the top of this anyways, and then I'm gonna have some seam sealer in there. So, you know, it is what it is. It's 100% better than it was. The kick panel, we'll clean that up, the rest of that up as we go. I've got a little bit of a low spot in here I need to fill and with some weld and then grind that out and sand it out. So I got myself, I made myself a stencil for the firewall here. And I went ahead, let's see if I can get this to sit down in there nice. So you can kind of see there how that looks. For now, I'm going to repair it with the idea of putting the original heater box back in. I am reserving my right to change my mind on this. I may come back in later on and cut the box out and sheet over this smooth and have a smooth firewall. And then we'll adapt for the vintage air system when we get it. I just can't quite do that now while it's on the stand. So I'm gonna leave my options open and I'm gonna set it up like we're gonna use it for the original box. I may change my mind on that down the line, but for now it's gonna do the job of getting the structure back together. So I've already gone ahead and traced this out and cut it. You guys see me do that a bunch, so I didn't feel like you needed to see that again. I got a new tool here. So Dad picked this up at an estate auction. It's an old snap-on metal brake. So we're gonna give it a shot. This is my first time using it here. So I'm gonna get you guys set up and we're gonna break that piece for the front pinch weld and the bottom flange. So we'll see how this goes. First time using this. I'm excited about this though. It's nice to have a nice big brake. Can do larger pieces. This wouldn't even have fit in my other brake. Just got to think about this for a second, make sure I'm going the right way here. If I bend that, we're gonna, yep, okay. All right, let's see how this works. I can see a little deflection in the middle of the panel. Not too bad. If I give it a, if I go slow, it kind of works its way out. Go in iterations here. Just trying not to over bend it here. We want it to be at a straight 90. Should be pretty darn close there. That's not bad at all. Cool. And try and do the same thing on this edge. Now I'm going to have a little interference here, so we'll just see how it goes. I may end up trimming this back a little bit just so I can make this bend. Or maybe I'll get it started and finish it off manually. Yeah, okay. At that point it's hitting on the brake here and it's wanting to pull that out. So I'm not going to pull any further because it's going to pull the panel out as the metal hits here on the edge of the brake. But I can either trim this back in here, or we can now just manually fold this over the rest of the way now that we got it started. I'll probably just manually fold it over. Okay, so I got a good start on that, and I'm just going to dolly it over. I've done this on a number of other panels where we had to do manual bends. All right, see now, if I had to trim this out to fold it up, then I'd have to patch this back in. Now I've got a nice tight corner in there and I still got a nice bend on that. So I'm happy with that. Now, the other thing that I don't have yet are, I left enough material here to notch this and fold this back for the flange for the heater box. I'm not gonna worry about that just yet because I do think there's a high likelihood that, like I said, I'm not going to use the original heater box at all. So this is really just to get the project moving forward, to get the rotted piece of the firewall fixed for now, and then I'll make a decision if I'm going to fully customize the firewall later. Okay, you can see I left myself enough metal here to fold over to match this flange, and I left myself enough up here to bend that back and to match that as well. So if we decide to go with this box, like I said, that's what'll happen. I'll end up notching this here, bending that over, curving that back, and then we'll have all this will match nicely. But for now, I think I'm gonna weld it in just like this. I've pretty well decided that what I wanna do eventually is cut all of this out, meaning the opening here, these flanges and all this, and weld myself in a flat piece of sheet metal. I may have to run a few beads in the panel just to give it some strength, but so it doesn't flop an oil can. But I think I'm gonna like the look better of that being clean, and then using the vintage air system, which will mount under the dash inside the truck. And it'll have just 2 openings for the heater hoses, I believe. So I kind of like that idea better. It'll clean up the firewall quite a bit rather than having an adapter plate for the vintage air system over the top of this. I think the custom firewall will look a little bit nicer. So, but unfortunately, that's all the time I've got for today. I've got to leave it there. So we got quite a bit done today, though it doesn't feel like it for some reason. Like I said, I got all the dash torn apart and the wiring out. That really didn't take me that long, and I didn't film it, but I did get that done today. We got our kick panel installed. We've got all the little patches and little pipe pieces I needed to cut in there done. I did actually wire wheel up the door hinge there, this bottom one, because it was groaning and moaning so loud. We got the kick panel all fully welded in, and then we got this mocked up. And that's where we're gonna have to call it for today, unfortunately. I'm just out of time. But here's the thing, guys. I've been thinking a lot about this, and I think the overall message that I want this channel to be about is, you know, just making steady progress on your projects, big, small, or otherwise. I can think back to when we were looking at this truck, trying to figure out exactly how much repair work had to be done in the cab, and just remembering how overwhelmed I felt in that moment of how much work had to be done, and it just felt like it was going to be a never-ending project, and I had gotten in over my head. But that was looking at the project as a whole. If you step back and you focus on one thing at a time and you make progress every week, I mean, every week, every other week, whatever you can do, every hour you spend working on your project is 1 hour you don't have to work on it tomorrow. And eventually, all those hours add up and the project gets pushed forward and you get motivated and you work harder and you push harder to finish your project. And that's exactly what's happening with me and this truck. I'm so excited at where we're at right now. I'm excited with the progress. I cannot wait to drive this thing. And my goal is going to be to drive this next summer. I have some plans in mind. We're not going to have the final drivetrain ready, but I have some ideas. I'll share those with you guys at a later date. But for now, what we're focusing on is getting this cab done. I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We've got to get the cab done, and then we can start to focus on some other things. But I'm feeling really good about this. I hope you guys are seeing the project every week and it's motivating you to work on your projects, because if you don't work on your projects, they will not work on themselves. Get out in the garage, get building, and I'll see you on the next episode of Cody Builds.